Hello, good morning. My name is Jon Witt, and this is a Hatha 1 class. So if you've never taken class with me before, thanks for trying the class out. It's a base level class to help produce better practice. So if you're a person that's new to yoga, I always recommend maybe some things you're not using initially. If you have some sort of limitation or condition, you have to consider these things before actually trying some of them. Like if I had lower back herniation, that is really something that you shouldn't forward bend. And then with stenosis of the lower back, then forward bending is good. That's like two different spectrums in terms of with yoga, but back pain is kind of it's usually like the highest restriction for people. But if you have questions and you'd like to know more about how to develop a practice, you can always reach out to me and I'd love to help you as much as I can. All my information is on my website. It's jonwittyoga.com. So if you'd like to make a contribution to today's class, it helps me in my cause in helping people. So I hope you've been benefiting from these classes. You can, again, always let me know what you need more of in the class, and I'd love to help, add variety. So I try to change up the class as much as I can. But in doing that, again, I might be missing some things, so I'd like to have your input as far as what you actually need. So I'm going to be having my feet about the width of my hips. I'm going to have my hands behind me, and I'm just widening out through the shoulders, and I'm going to come up onto the toes. And for a count of 3, silent count, I'm not going to count, but you're going to come down towards the heels and then bringing the heels up. So even though I'm not lowering the heels below, obviously, the floor, it'll help stretch up the feet. So if someone was really, really tight in the feet, this is a good starting point. So I'm coming up, and then I'm slowly lowering down. I'm going to come up again. I'm going to hold the top position for a few seconds, and then I'm slowly, 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 slowly lowering down. And then as I lower down, I'm just going to be moving the weight around in my feet. So if you've ever rolled your ankle before, you wouldn't want to move in a really great range of motion initially. But as I move my weight into the corners of the feet, basically assimilating a rolled ankle, so it'll help support breaking down the scar tissue in the feet and the ankles if that's something that you've had before. So if I ever find that I'm limited in one foot more than the other, then I would spend more time in that foot. Some people like to count. You could do 10 counts. Some people do better with time. You could time these things. But you want to have one or the other. So if you're not really relating to the time, you probably aren't going to do it long enough. That's my take on this. So I'm going to take my feet out a little bit wider than my shoulders. My feet are going to be turned out, and I'm going to bend my knees. And then as I bend my knees, I'm going to take my arms out wide. My thumbs are up for you to see, but this is just to help rotate the shoulders back. So I'm in an external rotation. And then as I'm in an external rotation with my arms, I'm working on rotating more through the arm or the shoulder that doesn't rotate out as much. So then I'm going to rotate the thumbs forward and down and in, so that as I'm rotating in, this will help with rotating out. So I'm going to rotate back out again. I'm going to rotate back forward. So think the arms are widening as you do this. Think the thighs are widening as you do this. And then one more time in rotating out. And maybe you're already up. Maybe you're not in this position. If you're still in the positions, try to keep the tailbone down. And then that'll help you so that you're not using your lower back so much in this. And then you can bring yourself up, and then you can bring your arms down. I'm just going to take the feet back into the middle. I'm just going to do a basic side bend to the left. So when I'm to the left, I'm going to let my head tilt to the left shoulder if I can. Both arms are relaxed. If you can, pick up more through your right side. So elevate through the right side. Take a couple deep breaths here. Breathing in and out through the nose. I'm talking, so obviously I'm breathing through my mouth. But the concept of breathing in and out through the nose is going to help develop more heat. You can bring yourself up, and then you can side bend to the right. And then as you're going to the right, Again, try to pick up more and more through your left side. So what's really tight for most people is right around the pelvis. So try to isolate more of a lift through that area and then generate more of a lift into the rib cage. Both shoulders are widening as you're in this just naturally. And then bringing yourself back up. And then as you're up, I'm going to take my hands behind me. I'm going to come up onto the toes. I'm going to lift my heels off the floor. So again, I'm in a straight line. I'm going to slowly lower the heels. And then I'll come up again. I'm going to hold. If I can, I'm going to turn my head over my right shoulder. So as I turn my head, it'll change the balance of the pose. I'm going to turn forward and then looking over the left shoulder. And then turning forward and then lowering the heels and relaxing the arms. I'm going to go back into that squat again, but just think when you're squatting, try to get the tailbone to move down. Not incredibly a lot, but just something that you, again, aren't supporting your lower back so much in the position. So with my feet out, I'm going to turn my feet out. They don't have to turn out as much as I am. But I'm going to bend my knees, and then as I bend my knees, I'm going to take my arms out. And again, just to get more time and practice in terms of multiple areas of the body. So I'm going to have my thumbs turned up again. I'm going to rotate the shoulders back. I'm going to rotate forward, down and in. So I want to be moving predominantly from the shoulders. And then if you're moving from your hands or your elbows, it's not bad, but really you want to get the shoulders to move better. So I'm going to rotate forward again, down and in. And then I'm going to rotate back, right? And I'm going to hold the back position. Now you could sit lower than I am, right? You could work on that. And that's really more based in flexibility. But if I'm sitting lower, I'm going to push my legs out further. And then you can bring yourself up and you can bring your arms down and then just taking the feet back into the middle. I'm going to stretch out the quads a little bit, and you could use a wall. I have a wall, to support myself. I'm going to take my left leg up. I'm going to hold my left foot. And as I'm doing this, I want to keep the leg up. Like this is passive stretching, which is obviously really good for most people. You could also be active. So I'm actively lifting my leg towards my pelvis, right? So it's obviously the hands keeping it up, but I also want to get stronger in my positions. And then I'll bring my left foot down. I'm going to turn just so that you can see. And then if I was using the wall, so I'm holding, and you can hold with both hands, say you have the flexibility to do that. If I couldn't do this, I'd have my foot on a chair. And for, this is, some people really can't take the leg up as high for a number of reasons. So that could be the option. Then I'm pushing through the left foot, I'm pulling it in, right? I'm trying to lift it up with the strength of my hamstring and then bringing the foot down. So that's typically very tight for people, especially if you're doing a lot of sitting these days. So I'm going to take my feet out a little bit wider than my shoulders. I'm going to turn my right foot out. I'm going to take the arms out wide. Same thing, I'm going to turn the palms up. I'm going to bend my right knee, and I almost say this every time I teach the pose, is that, if you're working towards sitting low, that's good. But at some point you'll get really, really good at that, and that's bad, but you're not really going to get stronger from it. So if we had a conversation and you're like, oh, I'm using this to get stronger and more flexible, well then maybe you're not sitting as low as a 90-degree angle. This angle would never be in a yoga ad, right? But it might be the best angle for you in terms of getting stronger and healthier. So I'm going to bring my right forearm on my right thigh, and I'm just turning my body to the left. Right? I could reach lower if I wanted to, or if I needed to. I'm going to take my left arm up, and then I'm going to take it forward overhead. And then as I'm taking the arm forward, I want contrasting forces, right? I want my left foot to be working. I want my abdomen to be working. Take one more breath here, then taking the arm up, and then come up into a warrior two again. And it wouldn't be bad to straighten the leg out and then to go back into it. Like let's say you were cramping, I think that's okay, right? That's perfectly fine. Then bring your arms down, turn the right foot in, and turn the left foot out. Push the thighs apart. Again, tailbone's moving down. Take the arms out, and then as you take the arms out wide and you're extending out to the sides of your room, again, find the best angle in terms of getting your left leg to be stronger. And when you get really strong legs, or stronger legs, it's easy to get like more dynamic in terms of range. Not that we're getting deeper into this, but like, for instance, if I was doing a Cossack stretch, it's a bigger range of motion. So you could bring the left forearm on the left thigh. You could take the arm forward in space. So the right arm is forward, overhead. I could reach for the floor. Now if my hand's on the inside of my leg, I'm pushing my arm out into my leg so that I'm opening up more through the hips, through the pelvis. So take a couple deep breaths here. Breathe in, breathe out. Refer to your back foot. If you're really heavily relying on your hand, don't bring it down. Like, let it hover. Take the right arm up and then bring yourself up into warrior two. So pubic bone's lifting up and then bringing yourself up and then bringing your arms down. Turn the left foot in and then just step the feet back into neutral. So just a neutral stance. So I'm going to stretch out the hamstrings like I said earlier in class. Got to be careful with your back, take good care of yourself. So I'm going to turn my feet. I'm going to have my feet 3 feet apart, and then as I turn my feet to the right, my pelvis is squared, and then as it's squared, I'm going to come forward, and then as I come forward, even though we could come forward and lower, I'm doing this specifically so that you're stretching out your leg more. So it's not bad to get lower, Lower will probably stretch out your hips more than your hamstrings. It'll stretch out your back more, but when I'm here, it's very isolated in the hamstring. So take a couple deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. And bringing yourself up. And then I'm going to turn the feet opposite direction. I'm going to lift myself up. So this is an anterior tilt of the pelvis. So what that means is that it's opposite to what we were doing before with the squats. So with forward bending, the pubic bone moves between the thighs. The pelvis is more tilting forward. And that's what's helping to bring the body forward. If I was in a posterior tilt, you'd see this really predominant rounding of the lower back. And that can be a little bit risky in terms of this type of position. So take 2 deep breaths. Use your breathing to support the pose. And then bringing yourself up. And then as you come up, you can turn the left foot in and then just step the feet back into a neutral stance. So I'm going to, again, go back into a side bend. So I'm going to the left. The left side is picking up. Now I'm more in a posterior tilt. Even though this isn't a back bend, believe that's more neutral for most people's backs, and it'll stretch it out as well. So bring yourself up, side bend to the left. So you're getting all this great space on the right side. And maybe, as I always say in these classes, maybe you need to hold one side longer. And if you're really in a lot of pain, maybe you're not going into one direction today. Then as you get healthier, then you'll have more options. Take one more breath. And then bringing yourself back up. And then you don't have to use a wall, but because I have a wall behind me, I'm going to use a wall for my triangle. It's a much greater stretch. So if you're really wanting more space, the wall is good. If you're a person that needs more stability, the wall is great. It's just with the wall, because it is more demanding, you probably won't go as far as you would, say, without the wall. So I'm going to take my arms out. So people with pain in the pose, you want to move the pelvis as you move the body, right? So as I'm moving my right hand down, I'm taking my left arm up, I'm pushing through my feet, and I'm turning up against the wall. So just to give you a perspective, is take the hand higher, and it just has a different effect. So when I'm up higher, it's actually more hip, like QL, rotators a bit. And then when I'm lower, it's still that area, right? It's a little bit higher up onto my lower back. It's into my ribs. And what you're feeling might be different than what I'm, describing. But turn up towards the hand if you can. And then bringing yourself up and turning your right foot in and turning your left foot out. Like I said, the wall can be just too much. So if it's too much, just be in the middle of the room. In terms of stretching, right? So take the arms out, go out to the left. As you go out to the left, you can take the left hand on the shin or the thigh, and the right arm is up. And just kind of see how your head is in space in terms of your neck. It's good to turn the head up, but it's not like it's not like you have to. Some schools of yoga, that's what they teach, but you certainly don't have to do that. Again, I could be higher up on the leg, and it's just different. And if you do a lot of yoga, the best thing you could do is changing the way that you do your poses. So giving yourself variety, because you get so good at it that you're not going to benefit as much, and you possibly might start to feel some aches and pains from having a repeated stress injury. So take one more deep breath, turn towards the right, and then bringing yourself up. And then you can bring your arms in, you can turn your left foot in, and then just stepping the feet back in. So I'm going to come down on the hands, I'll do some stuff on the floor. So I'm coming down on my hands and my knees. My hands are turned out, just so that it's easier for those of you that need it for your wrists. So I'm just moving the weight around a little bit. And then as I'm moving the weight around, it's just to adjust the hands, the wrists, the shoulders. Take a couple deep breaths here. And then come back into the middle and round through the shoulders, so round through the back. Try not to round so much through the lower back. Make it more specific for the upper back. And then lift, articulate through the upper back. And same thing, you could very well lift from your lower back. Not that that's a bad thing, but most likely your upper back isn't moving as well as your lower back. So push through your hands. Round through the spine, round through your back. One more time, we'll back bend. Lift the front of your body, arcing your back, and then exhale, rounding the spine. So just come to neutral, but let the chest drop down in between the arms. So this is retraction of the shoulders, but when you're on your hands, you want to be protracting the shoulders. You want to push. So if you're not getting that push through the arms, through the shoulders, it's really hard on the wrists. So if you don't have a lot of strength, get in the habit of gripping the floor. You use your hands to support your weight. So I will come up into a plank pose. I'm going to lift the knees off the floor. So before I do that, I'm going to be a little bit into a posterior tilt with my pelvis, and then I'm pushing through the hands. Right? And I'm just kind of seeing how my weight sits in space. Sometimes I lean to one hand more than the other. So I'm just trying to bring the weight into a more balanced way for myself. And you can do the same for yours. So pull back up into a down dog. And then in a down dog, you can pedal the legs out. Right? You can create some stretching of the calf muscles, of the hamstrings, and of the hips. And then you could come forward and through into an up dog. So I'm lifting through the upper body. And then I'm pulling back up into a down dog. I'm going to do that one more time. Again, maybe you're not back bending. So come forward, come through. Say your back hurts from back bending. You could put a block underneath your thighs, and then that adds more leverage. It supports the lower back in elongating. Go back up into a down dog. And then in a down dog, I'm going to come down on my knees, and I'm going to have my toes tucked. And I'm going to sit back on the feet. So some people very, very tight in the feet. It's often the case. So the more you manipulate the feet, the easier it will be to manipulate hamstrings, hips. So if you can't do like classic positions, I would work at least a few times on mobilizing the tissues of your feet. That could help you tremendously. So come back where your hands are here, and then I'm going to untuck the toes and then sit back on the feet. So you can put something in between your thighs and your feet and your legs. You don't have to sit back as far as this. You know, it's a gradual process. So if it's been a long time since you've sat in any type of position like this, it takes time. You know, be patient with yourself. But anybody can get more flexible. That's you know, it just takes, for some people it takes a little bit longer, but it's just a matter of practice. So come forward, take the knees up off the floor, lift up through into your plank, right? Come up into a down dog, right? And then walk your feet forward to the middle of your mat, and walk your hands back towards your feet so that you're in a standing forward bend. It's just a, you know, basic position. My knees are bent so that I'm more in my back than I am in my legs. If I want to focus more on my legs, I'm working towards getting my legs straight. So again, someone with a herniation, they would be here, elbows above the knees, and still this might be too much for you. So then you just stand, right? No problem. You just stand and you focus on standing, side bending. Typically is the route that I would use. But if I am gonna get down, I'm gonna stretch out your back a little bit more. So I'm gonna come up where my hands are off the floor and my back is purposely rounding here, right? Like old classic yoga is a lot of rounding to the back, which is very, very good for the spine for most people. So when I'm rounding, I'm going to slowly roll myself up. And then as I come up to standing, I'm neutral. I'm going to have my hands on my hips. And then I'm just going to bring my tailbone down. And then I'm going to stick my butt out. So tailbone down is all back bends, planks, you know, arm balances, handstands, headstands. So basic pelvic position helps with understanding the most remedial poses and the most advanced positions. So you can stick it out again, and then you can bring it down, and then you can just relax. So I'm going to come to the top of the mat. I'll do some poses, you know, like a modified sun salutation. This is something that I've used extensively over the years for more like basic yoga. It's a good way, it's a very easy way. Stepping forward to the top of the mat from down dog is a good way of transitioning, but not everybody can do it. So this is another way that you can. So I'm going to be forward. Have a chair in front of you or blocks in front of you so that when you fold forward, it's just easier. So you can take the arms up overhead. You can fold forward into a forward fold. Again, if you need more rounding in the spine, you can certainly round your back. I'm going to step the left foot back into a lunge. And then with the left foot back, just try to make it a little bit longer, a little bit wider. Take the right arm up to the ceiling so the right arm is high and the left hand is low. Push strong through the right foot. Drive through your feet. Turn your upper body to the right. You could take the arm forward if that's better. Right? Take the arm up towards the ceiling. Bring the right hand down. Step the left foot forward. So I'm just doing a twist before we do warrior one and some of those types of positions, right? I'm going to step the right foot back into a lunge. I'm going to make it long and wide. I'm going to move the weight around. So as you develop, the stance will continue to get longer and longer. You may need a longer yoga mat if you're running out of space. So take the left arm up to the ceiling so the left arm is high. Drive through the left heel. Get your posterior to support you. And then if this is the angle, which is predominantly shoulders and upper back, right, that's good. But you can take it forward. And then as you're taking it forward, it's just, kind of the same line of the back leg. Just an aesthetic, not something that you have to have. You can take the left arm up, you can bring it down, and then step the right foot forward. So both feet are forward. You're in a soft forward bend. I'm going to step my left foot back. I'm going to bring my left heel down. I'm going to come up into a warrior one. So in warrior one, again, I'm trying to get my hips squared, and it doesn't have to be today or now, right? But as I'm up in an overhead position, I'm trying to keep my belly, my ribs in. Same as if you were doing a handstand drill. Is basic yoga, but very good for alignment. Then have the right leg straight. Just maybe you can get a little bit more specific in the hips. And go back to bending the right knee, And again, it's not bad to explore longer, bigger, that's what you would do if you were doing like split work. So I'm going to come forward where I'm going to balance on my right foot. So my back foot's still on the floor. This is how you could do it, right? I'm going to come forward, and then as I come forward, I'd be upright if I'm concerned with my back, right? But if I'm not concerned with my back and I do want to stretch out my legs more, I'm going to bring my hands down to blocks or the floor. Now you could stay in either position, up or hands down. I'm going to take my hands up, right? Just this, I don't want to ever get too stable, in my opinion, because, you can benefit from both. So I'm going to bring my hands down once again. And then even here, right, I'm still trying to use my hip flexor strength, which is something you might not be using in your yoga practice. So come up into a high lunge. So come up into a high lunge if you can. A couple deep breaths. And then bring your hands down, and you can bring your back knee down the floor. So your left knee is going to come down. I'm going to take my hands over to the left hip, and I'm going to look high over my left shoulder. So these low positions, very, very beneficial for producing more space in the body. So like what we've used up to this point are all good positions, but these lower positions are really, in my opinion, going to be more beneficial for you if you're lacking more flexibility. So take the hands on the inside of the foot, and then just as you're moving the weight around, just see where you need to leverage, right? You want to use, the feedback that you're getting, but then also like not being overzealous. Like, I would never just start out holding a pose for 3 minutes. I would gradually build it up, as an example. So bring your hands, bring your right hand on the outside of your right foot, and then sit your hips back 6-8 inches back. Point through the front foot, and you can flex it. You can point it. You can flex it. And I could be high up on something like a chair, right? Especially if I'm concerned with my back. I'm going to come back into a low lunge. So I'm taking my back knee up off the floor. Again, keep trying to make it longer. Like I see this with people, and they'll keep the same stance for years, and then they'll say, "Hey, why isn't my practice?" You really have to strive more if you want more. It's going to be uncomfortable, right? Step the left foot forward, and then with the left foot forward, I'm going to separate my feet a little wider than my shoulders, and I'm going to sit in a low squat. Now, if my heels are up, perfectly fine. If you put something underneath your heels, another good way. If I'm holding something that had some weight, all good ways, all right? But let's say any position that you come out of and you're like, whoa, I really hurt from that. I mean, the common theory would be like, well, don't do it. Well, what I would do is I'd do it differently. It's not that I wouldn't do it, but I would change the way that I'm doing it, and most likely that will help you. But, that's my take on that. So if I'm squatting and I come out, my back hurts, it might be that you need more extension, or you actually do need a round. So fold forward into a forward fold, and then step the right foot back, bring the right heel into the floor, and come up into an overhead position. So you're in a warrior one on the left side. Hands could be very wide apart. Arms could even be down in this type of position, but trying to get my tailbone to move down, trying to lift my pubic bone up. And then as I take my arms up overhead, right, I'm still trying to keep the front of my body from not being in this arc. People think like they need to arc, but it's really actually the opposite. So have the left leg straight. You could turn the hips a bit just to increase the line. And what's important is that you're really observing what's actually happening, and you'll see how to make your practice better for yourself. So go back to bending the left knee. Take a couple deep breaths here. Right, it's not bad if you're only using your front leg, but to stretch out the body, it's the back foot. So take the arms down, take the back heel up off the floor, and maybe this is your balancing pose. Both feet are down, but the heel is up. It's a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to come forward, As I come forward, I'm up high. If I'm concerned with my back, if I'm not concerned with my back, I have good extension, don't have anything pre-existing, then I could get lower. I could get my hands to my blocks or the floor, and then I'm going to take my hands up just to practice a little bit more balance, right? Just so that I'm not getting too comfortable. If you can, have your foot straight, right? And then that'll make it more difficult to balance, right? I think it's better to be off balance than to be really stable. And that's the mistake that people make. They'd much rather hold it for a longer period of time. And they're kind of kidding themselves. They think that they're getting stronger, but it's actually the opposite. So bring the hands down, step your right foot back into a lunge, bring your back knee down, walk your hands over to the right side, and look high over your right shoulder. So when things get easy for you, you want to make them more difficult so that you, again, continue to keep learning in terms of balance, in terms of strength, in terms of even flexibility, right? So the head's lifting, and then take the hands back in the middle. I'm going to take my left hand on the outside of my left foot. I'm going to sit my hips back. So we're not lifting the leg off the floor, but we're actually engaging in that. So engaging in the hip flexor is why I can get more forward over my leg. When we did it earlier in class, we were upright, remember? We were in that split stance. And we came forward. So I'm not as far forward as I would with my hands, but it's actually a greater stretch of my leg. So again, what may look more advanced may not necessarily be the application that you should be using. Again, perfectly fine to have the hands down. So I'm going to come back where I'm taking the back knee up off the floor. I'm going to take my left arm up to the ceiling. So pull back through the hips, bring the left hand down, and then step the right foot forward. So both feet are forward. So go back to grabbing the elbows, bend the knees. I'm in a low squat if I can. Sitting on a block is good. But let's say it's just uncomfortable. And it's like, it's not fun, right? It's probably what you need the most, to be honest. It's not like, but to really be more resilient and to be, I guess, a little bit more just weathered when things don't go your way is a good practice. And that's why I teach handstands, because it's not easy for most people. Like, you really have to fight through that to get more benefits. And obviously you could have a very beneficial life without learning a handstand or anything like that, but it's really like, you don't want your practice to get easier and easier and easier, and then you're kind of left where you can't really do much of anything, right? So I'm going to bring my hands behind me. I'm going to sit down. So if you need to come out a different way, you could certainly do that. Have the legs forward and just circle the feet in a circular motion. So just get the feet to move around. As you move your feet around, you can move them in the opposite direction. And then point the feet and flex the feet, point and flex. And then go back to bending the knees where your knees are bent and retract your shoulders back. So get your shoulders to move back. Then push through your heels and lift through your hips. And then as you're in this, keep the shoulders moving back. I'm just going to move side to side, which is much easier on the hands, the wrist. I like this direction as far as movement, but I also like forward and back. So just bring your hips down, and just as an example, it's good to come up for a few seconds or more, and then to come down, and then to go back, and then you get more time in the position, as opposed to just holding it. Like, some people will be like, they'll say like a 2-minute hold is a good measure. Well, it can be, but you don't want to just be gritting your teeth and doing it, right? So I'm going to push through the feet, I'm going to lift the hips, and then as I have my hips up, I'm going to move my hips forward and then back. But I don't want to compensate my hips coming down for the sake of bringing my hips forward more, right? I want to keep them up. and then one more time I'm bringing it back, and then one more time I'm bringing it forward. As it gets easier, you could do more reps, right? But I don't necessarily know who's doing this, so that's why I keep it on the lower end. And then you can bring your hips down, and then you can take your arms around your legs. If you have a good practice, you could do that 10 times or 20 times, right? You can push the knees out into the arms, lift yourself up. Right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hold of my left foot with my hands. I'm going to try to bring my armpit, my knee together. So if you can notice, my arm is above my shin, which requires me to pick up my torso more. So if your shoulder's lower, you're going to notice that you're rounding, right? Not that that's a bad thing, right? But if you're losing extension, all the more reason to have the leg above the shin. I take a couple deep breaths here. Then I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to take my right foot back. I'm going to hold. My knee eventually is inside the armpit, if you can. And it'll just help broaden the shoulders, broaden your back. So you can't do happy baby, or lunging is very difficult. All these positions there's similarities to them, and one will help the other, You really tighten your hamstrings, right? At least a few times a week, work on them. Same thing with the quadriceps. So it's just, then you can divide it through the week, just so that you always have variety. Then bring the foot down, go back to having the knees bent, just to stay warm and, help you get a little bit stronger. Press through the hands, lift through the hips. So these are straight arm positions, which are, not to say that they're more in yoga, but straight arm positions for me are definitely easier to do. And they'll help with you getting bent arm strength, like push-ups, possibly. Like if you wanted to learn a pull-up, right? It's a different action, but it is bent arm strength. So I'm going to bring the hips forward, and then bringing the hips back and forward, but hips high. So it's more upper back that you're adjusting. And then bringing the hips down. As you bring the hips down, just because I have a nice wall behind me, I'm going to do some stuff with the wall. You could put yourself up against a sofa or a chair. It's kind of like what we did with triangle, but it's a little different because you are on the floor. So with your legs crossed, I want my hips back up against my prop, whatever that may be. So just sitting upright. You put a block underneath your shoulder blades, that's a true 90-degree angle. Whatever level that is, low, mid, high level, that's all 90-degree angles, that's good. So I'm going to take my right hand to the right, and then as my right hand's to the right, I'm going to lean up against the wall. I'm going to turn my upper body. Now I can take my arm up the wall. I can take my hand behind my head, right, just to adjust my hip. And again, with the wall, it's more of a stretch. So if you're not as flexible, you could be away from the prop and you could still really benefit from this. So you don't have to be on your elbow, but being on your elbow is going to be more leverage. So if you want more leverage, get lower with your elbow. It's okay if your left hip comes off the floor a little bit. You can take your arm out to the side. You can bring yourself back up. I'm going to recross my legs. And then as I recross my legs, I'm going to pull my hips back so that I'm back up against the wall. I'm going to take my left hand to the left. My right hand's out to the right. I'm leaning up against the wall. Right? I'm taking my arm up the wall. Right? I'm taking my hand behind my head. And again, everybody's going to have an opinion as far as what's the best option. But I would, on the day that I don't feel good, I choose the easiest option. And on days that I feel good, I choose the more complex option. Right? Just because, again, your body will keep adapting to stress where you can continue to grow as a person. You can take your right arm up to the right and bring yourself up, and you're going to sit. So I'm cutting these classes a little bit short just because, again, I don't necessarily know who's doing them, and I think shorter is better. If you have an existing practice, obviously you're going to want more. So all these live classes are uploaded weekly on my YouTube channel, so you can subscribe. You can share them with your friends. It helps me tremendously. And for years, I never advertised my services. and I've been very successful with it because I've had such great people recommending me and my classes. So if you could help me, it helps, again, me helping more and more people. So have a beautiful weekend. I have a class tomorrow morning. It's at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and that's on Zoom. So if you'd like to take class where I could see you, a similar class to this, then I could give you feedback in terms of your practice. That's 10 a.m. Eastern on Zoom. I have other classes throughout the week on Zoom. That's Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. All right, so thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll hear about your results and how you're benefiting from my class soon. All right, take care.